So if you're looking at this, you might be interested in hiking the Grand Canyon. Maybe you've never done it or have done it a little bit, and maybe you're looking for information on a longer hike, a more committed type of experience. And what follows is about 12 hours of a much longer entire amount of time that we were actually on the trail. I think we were on the trail from, well, I can just tell you, started at the North Rim at about, we were hiking for sure by 3:45 a.m. So 8, and got off the trail at about 8:30. So we're looking at about 16 and a half hours or so we were on trail. Now so the hike was North Rim to South Rim straight through, no stopping, with the exception of about a 50-minute lunch break. Well, that's actually not true, not stopping. About a 50-minute lunch break at the Phantom Ranch, at the ranch. And this video is to basically talk about some of the things that I see either on Reddit or just questions online that I happen to come across, and I get fed or pushed stories on the Grand Canyon because the powers that be are obviously reading my emails, apparently, and knowing where I am. So let's just hopefully quickly and with much brevity, as much as I can muster, give you some tips and pointers about doing it. So let's do that. So the trip that this video pertains to was done on July 21st, 2023, which was a Friday. I intentionally chose that date because it would be almost as hot as possible. I intended to do it in the hottest time of year. That was as close to the hottest time of year as I could get to the Grand Canyon per my schedule, and I did that intentionally. I wanted to experience that epic heat, and it was about 116 in the corkscrew devil's furnace, or whatever the terms are that people use. You've gone over the Colorado, now you're on the Bright Angel heading up, and you're probably for sure an hour in. Started at the North Rim and went straight to the South Rim, that small break. If you're gonna hike, there's no possible way to over prepare. Treadmill work, weight training work on your glutes will be very, very beneficial. Your quads, making sure that your ankles and your knees are mechanically in good shape, because all of that is going to get exceptionally taxed. I would also recommend some sort of light weight training on your back, your lower back, because you're probably going to be carrying a backpack that will likely have water in it. That will certainly have water in it. So physical conditioning is something that I can say that you can't do too much of. For me personally, being from a musculature perspective, being reasonable, I wasn't super concerned about that. But what really comes into play is the altitude. And a lot of this is going to sound, whoa, careful, careful. And yeah, you need to respect the fact that the Grand Canyon National Park is the deadliest of all national parks. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But what people don't really expect, and what I didn't expect the second time I did a Grand Canyon hike, the first time was 2022, where my wife and I went from the South Rim to the Phantom Ranch, stayed overnight, and then hiked out the next day. What you don't know in your head, you know it's going to be hot, because you'll probably hear that, but what a lot of people don't talk about is the elevation. So don't quote me, but you're going from about 2,000 feet at the Colorado up to about 7,000 feet. And that's really high above sea level. So the oxygen content is absolutely compromised. Your ears will pop, and you will be breathing very heavily and very deeply because your body's trying to just get oxygen. So it's impossible to over prepare, and at least in my opinion. And I swim every day in the pool for 30 minutes. I happen to live basically at sea level, so when I was a young man, altitude didn't bother me. But when I got to be in my 30s and 40s and 50s, when I would go to, say, Denver, I didn't enjoy it because I had a constant headache. And plus, I was out of shape. So about 5-6 years ago, I started swimming every day for 30 minutes. And I've gotten to the point where I'm swimming with lots of weight on my ankles and on my wrists. So my lung capacity has gotten extremely good for someone in their early-ish 50s, mid-50s, really. I know that because I've challenged people a third of my age, half my age easily, who can hold their breath longer. My heart rate routinely gets down to 50 beats per minute in the middle of the night because I'm always wearing the watch. Because I know that I can hold my breath very efficiently in trickle breathe, actually, not just holding your breath, you're trickle breathing. And I can do really well. And I find after 30 minutes of swimming, this is all good. The only thing that happens is you get physically tired because you're swimming. And I happen to be swimming currently with 18 pounds distributed between ankles and wrists. So it's a lot of weight. So don't overlook the lung preparation. And if you can swim, or if you can spend a lot of time at altitude, I would recommend that you do that. So this part of it is preparation. You can't overdo it. Lightweight training, and if you can do any sort of training for your lungs, engage in that. We were in Scottsdale for 3 weeks prior to the hike, not necessarily in preparation, but we were able to spend our time out there because I could work during the day, adjust to the time zone, because I'm on the Eastern time zone where I live, so I could more naturally wake up at the early start time without being on 4 hours of sleep. That would be dreadful, which worked out. Plus, Scottsdale is at a higher elevation. Plus, it has tons of hiking, which we did. I was, for 3 weeks, every day on the treadmill for an hour. Swimming wasn't really an option, but I've been swimming for 5 years, and taking 3 weeks off of that'd be fine. Weights on my ankles, a good 1 hour, sort of routine on the treadmill every single day. And the getting out to Scottsdale 3 weeks earlier was prefaced with 6 months of swimming every day and treadmilling every day in preparation. And that was okay. And I realized after the rim to rim through hike that, if I ever did this again, which would not necessarily be a voluntary choice, I could be convinced to do it again. It would depend on who would be hiking with me, meaning, is that person physically capable of doing it, and et cetera, et cetera. But if I did do it again, I would absolutely do the lightweight training, and I would be doing it for probably not less than 6 months before. Now, having said all of that, there are people who show up and just hike, and they are 2 thumbs up, and that's awesome, or at least that's what they say they do. Hiking it through from north to south is an epic challenge. It was for me in the sense that there was never a chance that I wasn't going to get through it in a day or finish or have any sort of problem physically. But the problem with that understanding about yourself is you are only aware of what your body's telling you. When my wife and I hiked South Rim to Phantom Ranch and then out the next day, we both said, and we were 52 years old, we both said to each other, if you have an underlying physical condition, you are going to find out while hiking the Grand Canyon. It's extremely stressful. The heat is epic, and I've heard it explained that imagine being on a Stairmaster for 10 hours. That's false. A Stairmaster is in an air-conditioned environment. A Stairmaster is in a fixed altitude above sea level. A Stairmaster is step, step, step. So you're making progress with each step. The Grand Canyon, not so. You lift up a lot. You then put your foot back down into a recessed divot that's measured in inches. So every time you have to physically lift your leg, you're putting it down not really much higher than the distance that you actually have to lift. You have to lift here and then reset it here. So you have a 35% loss of result for the work that you're putting in. You know, if you're lifting your leg 6 inches, you're coming down, you're only getting 4 inch of benefit out of it, whatever. But the altitude will definitely bake your noodle if you are a flatlander like me. That's the problem with it. Now, what I should have prefaced all this by saying is, if you're considering it, do it 100%. Do it. Absolutely do it. Absolutely. It is beautiful. It is surreal. It is absolutely surreal when you get to the rim and you just look out. The eyes can't interpolate the distances. It looks, and it's not just me. Other people have said to me, it doesn't look like it's real. There's something about the volume, the depth, the height, the spatial environment that you're in that just doesn't translate to something that makes you feel as if this is realistic. It is so awe-inspiring that there's just no way to see it without going there. Now, when you're in the canyon, you don't have that sort of view looking over the rim, but when you're in the canyon, you have views that will last a lifetime for you. If you're going to do it, absolutely do it. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Lungs, musculature, then gear. Absolutely, let's talk a minute about gear. So gear is really important, and because we were hiking through, our packs were a lot less because we were definitely not planning on sleeping anywhere. At least that wasn't the plan, and we didn't. We went straight through. So for me, I happen to wear a sport t-shirt, something of nothing cotton on your body, an Under Armour, not to name names, but an Under Armour type shirt. I happen to be wearing one of high visibility, which wasn't necessarily planned, but it seemed to make sense. I had stretchy like bike shorts on without the padding in the back that had a pocket for my cell phone to go into, which was really handy. Cell phone, real quick. There's no cell service in the Grand Canyon. Below, maybe 1,000 foot below the rim, there's no cell service. You might get a touch where you know that, oh, you just got a notification. But at the end of the day, there's no cell service. However, I did notice a difference in how far below the rim we were from 2022 to 2023. It seemed like there was more cell coverage further below the rim. And I'm estimating about 1,000 feet. And then you would get notifications on your watch or whatever. There's no cell service. So be mindful of that. How I accounted for it was I bought a Garmin InReach. I think it's an InReach Messenger. So it's about that big, and it's not very heavy. Easily fits in my fanny pack. That is hooking to the Iridium satellite network. I bought that. I subscribed to the monthly membership, and I did so, and I learned how to use it, which is pretty simple, and I demonstrated proficiency and knew that it worked. I happened to be in Tulum, Mexico, and then we went on a couple of extended trips away from Tulum and took it with, and it performed flawlessly. It connects to the Iridium network. So your iPhone or whatever is connected to the Garmin InReach. That's talking to the satellite network. The reason I had it is because if I needed to call for help, I had the ability to do that. It was me, 53 years old, my son, who was 24. Yeah, 24 makes sense. He was, because of his age, he handled it extremely well. He took it seriously for like a year before, so he was training, treadmilling, running every day, light weightlifting every day. The only thing that got him was about the last third of the trip, about 18 miles or so. At about 18 miles, his knee started bothering him, a mechanical problem. Back to gear. Very light clothing. Some people wear long sleeves. There's going to be a tremendous amount of sun. I live in Southwest Florida, so how quickly I'll get sunburnt to someone who lives in Chicago is a different rate, so I wasn't worried about getting sunburnt, but don't be the fool. Have a very small amount of sunscreen with you. You won't need much. Shirt, very light pants. I had Under Armour, very light shorts on. phone in Messenger. I had a GoPro, which is all the video that you're going to see on my chest. I had 2 GoPros. The reason I had 2 is because the heat kills them regarding runtime. In 2022, when we did south to Phantom Ranch back out on the Bright Angel, that one GoPro 10 just couldn't handle it. It would die, and there's nothing you can do. You can put a new battery in it. It's not the battery. It's the heat. So I was hot swapping them, and that's what you were going to see. Of our 16 hours, there's only maybe 11 or 12 hours. So the 4 hours, let's say, that's not recorded, it's because I couldn't get either one of them to turn on. Absolutely dreadfully hot. So hot that your equipment's turning off. Shoes. I just had the typical Merrill. When we did 2022, Moab. I think mine were a Moab 2 for the 2022 hike. I then bought like a Moab 3. The problem was the fit was not perfect, and it may have been off a quarter of a size. And I didn't wear my 2022 boots on the 2023 hike because I wanted to have brand new boots. Not brand new. I'd been hiking in them for a while. I'd been on the treadmill with them for several weeks, but they were just a quarter size too tight. I lost 3 toenails, and I should have lost 4. And it is the end of May 2024. That hike was July of 2023, and I still have evidence on one of my toes of the damage that I did to the 4th toe. I still have evidence there. It'll be gone in a month or 2, but I lost 3 toenails, and that's because that fit's not right. Do not do the hike with shoes that are anything other than perfect. Don't do it. Don't do it. Socks, I use the Smart Wool, really thick. I just happen to like those. They're cushiony. I wear them every day, even here in Florida. Moleskin. Absolutely have moleskin. Interestingly, the week before we did the Rim to Rim, we went up from Scottsdale on a day trip. Actually, no, we stayed overnight at the El Tovar. And my wife and I went, or took a couple friends of ours up to the South Rim, just because they'd never seen it. Well, me and the husband of the group, of the couple that we went with, we went down to mile marker 1.5 and back out, just to show them it. I was wearing gym shoes. Stupid. I developed a blister on my left heel on the back, and you better believe that blister was with me a week later when we did the Rim to Rim. Moleskin went over it, and you know what? It made it survivable. I had 2 packs of it. North Rim down to the Phantom Ranch. We left at 3:45. We were sitting on the picnic benches at about 10:40 in the morning. Relaxing, got into the creek, which is that temperature is in the 50s. So it's really cold. Not really cold, but it's for me it's too cold to sit in, but your feet will really appreciate it. Coming back out, back to the park benches, lunch. I moleskinned. I used all the moleskin. Put it on the back of my heels of both legs. I didn't use all of it, but I used almost all of it. I had enough should my son have needed some, obviously. So moleskin, absolutely. You can get that at your REI or whatever. I also had water purification tablets. I had those with me. On the first trip, we did not have enough water. That was not good. And I'll just leave it at that. This time, not only did I have enough water physically with me, but I had those purification tablets. So I brought them and get down to the Bright Angel Creek, and I get my bottle and I put the tablet in there, and I just scoop up pond water. It's not pond water, but it's literally creek water. Dust, particulate, who knows all that's growing in it. Let it sit for the prescribed 30 minutes, and I said to myself, let's have it. I drank that whole thing down, and I said to myself, this is either going to turn out really bad or not at all. And nothing happened. No side effects, no sickness. The tablet worked perfectly, so I would absolutely recommend having those. And the reason is, before you plan your trip, you're going to be able to see, you'll look at the trail map, and you'll know where your water stops are. Don't go on the South Kaibab Trail if you need water stops. There aren't any between the rim, the South Rim, and basically just before the Phantom Ranch. So you'll know where all your water stops are, and if it's your first time, you're probably going to either under-prepare or over-prepare. Over-preparing is problematic because you're carrying a lot of water. I think our Camelback was a 2-liter or maybe a 3-liter, something like that. But we knew where the water was every single time. We developed an understanding of where we were on the walk down, and we were very comfortable. There were water stops there were a couple of them that we walked right past because we knew we were good, and we knew where the next one was. So Camelback, moleskin, tablets. I also had some sort of a tablet, like a Gatorade in a tablet form, and I know that I took them. I can't tell you if it helped or not, but I was drinking water constantly. Didn't go to the bathroom once in 18 hours, so use that. I believe that to be true. I do not recall. No, one time. One time at about 5.5 miles below the North Rim. So keep that in mind in terms of, the impact that it has on you on a physiological sort of state. I was using the Garmin InReach through the trip, texting my wife. My wife and my dad were ground crew. We went from, they dropped us off at the North Rim. My dad did, which we stayed in the closest town just north of the North Rim. I don't remember, you can easily look it up. Jacobs Lake is where it was. 30 minutes down, and then that was it. It was cool in the morning, for sure in the 50s, but it definitely didn't stay that way. So gear-wise, and then we had a little bit of food with us. I don't get hungry while I'm physically exercising, but I did have the stuff that's going to be there. I like nuts, I like raisins, and some of that stuff. So we had that, but it's not like you're hungry. We knew we would get to the Phantom Ranch. The cantina there would have coffee and the regular snacks and some souvenirs that you'll definitely want to buy, because it'll have either a decal or a patch or something that you're not going to get at the Rim. So you'll want to take something from, you want to buy something from there. So regarding gear, that was pretty much it. My son didn't have anything really different worth mentioning. Maybe he had chapstick. Oh, hats. Absolutely must. Don't even think about doing anything without a big floppy hat. Must have a string or it will get blown away. You don't want that. In terms of a start time, let's talk about that. Now, our 2024 trip originally was that we were staying at the North Rim, at the lodge at the North Rim. The walk from the lodge there to the trailhead is about 30 minutes. So, okay, fine. We got a 30-minute hike just before we get to the trailhead. No big deal. About 3 weeks before the trip, about 6 weeks before the trip's about to happen, I get an email that the lodging at the North Rim is canceled, closed, here's your refund. Holy cow, that's a problem, because I'm not going to sleep in the car the night before an epic hike. So I immediately got on the horn, so to speak, and got the hotel rooms at the hotel at the Jacob Lake Inn. So we were good, but that forced me to change my plan. We were going to get there the day before now, and then sleep, and then have to drive the 30 minutes down, which simply meant, here's my point. At the lodging at the North Rim, my dad was going to drive us to the trailhead, and that would only have taken 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Now we got to drive at highway speed for 30 minutes, getting from the inn at Jacob Lake down to the trailhead. No problem, but I had to adapt right then and there, and it did force our start time to change by 20-25 minutes. the bottom line with start time is the sooner you start, probably the sooner you're going to get off the trail. And when you're dealing with triple digit temperatures, you're going to want to think about where will you physically be at 10 in the morning, at 11, 12, and then the bewitching hours, that 1, the 2, the 3, the 4. Where will you be physically? Where will the temperature be? What elevation will you be at? You need to think about that. And I sliced and diced that in my head multiple times about, can we be cooler in the hottest part of the day? And the answer is not really. Not really. If you're going through rim to rim, you can go from the south north and you'll get through the corkscrew in the real hellish areas earlier. So that's an advantage. The disadvantage, though, is if you go from south to north, you've got an additional 2,000 feet to lift your legs. And I didn't want to do that because walking up is work. Going down is brutal. Going down is really not fun because your foot comes down and it's just the tips of your toes that are stopping the weight of all your body and your forward momentum. And that's why I think when you take the down movement, ill-fitting boots, and then when you're going up, just the lifting of your leg and your toenail making contact with the inside of the shoe in ill-fitting boots, that's where you're going to lose toenails. My wife lost 2 or 3 toenails when she did her trip, which she didn't appreciate, and I've lost fingernails in the past, and I know it's just going to grow back. So it wasn't a botheration to me, but it's simply telling you about the level of comfort that you have with your gear. So trying to figure out where it would be the least hot part of the day to me was a 6.5 dozen almost, but I didn't want to do the elevation hike from Phantom Ranch to the North Rim. So while we did it nearly the hottest time of the year, it would have been harder to go from south to north, in my opinion. That's guesswork. Now the Bright Angel is a dreadful trail in the sense that it just doesn't stop. If you're on an incline, but it's just a linear incline, you know what? You can do that. It's not really that big of a deal, but it's when you're doing this that you dread. I was routinely taking 90-second, 3-minute, 5-minute, 7-minute stops to bring the heart rate down on the up, on the Bright Angel going up. I had the Ultra, the prior. This might be an Ultra 2. Whatever watch came out in 2022, the Ultra version is what I had. That bad boy did a great job. It lasted about 18 miles of the trip. We walked 62,000 steps. I think we burned 3,600 calories, according to the watch at least. And the t-shirt that you can get says rim to rim 23.5 miles. That's a lie. It's definitely more than 25, at least according to all the technology I had. InReach, iPhone, watch. So it's 25.2 in my estimation. So when you plan to do it, north to south, south to north, if you've never done it before, but you're physically above average or noticeably above average, you understand heat really well, you've never had any sort of health issue in the past, I would really recommend doing it. I really recommend doing that. If I did it a third time, it'll be more enjoyable because I'm not gonna go straight through, because when you're going straight through, you want to be off the trail before it's dark, because it's the only light that you have is the one you bring with you. And by the way, we did have 2 flashlights, 2 small ones, which we absolutely used the last 45 minutes of the hike because we needed to. And I'm looking at the Merrell boots. Ankle support is crucial. You want to be, your etiquette while hiking, you want to maintain. You don't want to get lazy and let the boot do the work. You don't want to roll an ankle. But those Moabs, really great ankle support. It's not a very expensive boot. And there are boots out there that are $300, $400, $500. I would be a Merrill all day long. I tried on at REI in Scottsdale all these other boots. I just wasn't seeing it. And the Merrill just seemed like it was going to be perfect for what I wanted, and it was. So absolutely do it. And if you don't get the kind of answers that you want, I wouldn't really worry about that in the sense of transfers and the bus and the hotel lodgings. You know what? There's hotels there. Stay at the El Tovar if you can. It's a 100-plus-year-old hotel. Extremely cool. You're not going there for the cuisine. You're going there for the location and the view. Paul McCartney stayed there. There's a great story about him playing piano in the middle of the night on the second floor, and one of the guests calls down to the desk and says, "Would you tell that guy to stop playing piano?" Happened to be Paul McCartney. The story my dad likes to say is when Sylvester Stallone hiked the canyon, he called for a helicopter on the way out. And my dad says, because my dad's done it with my brother 3 decades ago. My dad and my son did the mule ride there and back. My dad likes to say even Sylvester Stallone couldn't hike out of the Grand Canyon from the Phantom Ranch. Just a tongue-in-cheek fun thing to say. Countless famous people, I'm sure, have been through that hotel over the last century. So definitely stay there if you can. And if you can't stay there, change your time. Go the following year and stay at the El Tovar. It's there. It's beautiful in the sense of where you are. Now, there are lots of online resources when you start doing this. And if you don't, what I was trying to say is if you don't get all the information that you want, know this. Shoes must be an A++. If they're not, don't do it. Prepare as much as possible. There's no such thing as over-preparing, in my opinion. Water, know where it is. Have it with you at all times. Have double what you think you'll drink. You can always pour it out if you're that sure. But if you don't have water, you're probably going to have a problem, and one that's not easy. There are, I think, 3 helipads north rim down to the Phantom Ranch that we counted, or 2. They're not there to deliver the caviar and champagne. There's only one reason that there are helipads there. There are none on the Bright Angel going out. If you need to call for help, you have no cell phone. You have no way to call a park ranger. And the only time that you're going to be discovered, and I'm speaking quite literally now, because all you have to do is search deaths in the Grand Canyon. You won't be discovered either having a problem or you had a problem and it's far too late now until a ranger does a cycle, comes down. When we were in the Devil's Corkscrew or the Jacob's Ladder, whatever the term is, yeah, there's a ranger and she's just out checking for people. Or I'm just checking for people, she said. Had we seen anyone? No one. No one. And that tells you something. No one's down there at 2 in the afternoon. And she's checking for people. Not to say hi. She's checking for people. Checking on wellness. Checking on... And we saw people, especially the first trip, they bit off more than they could chew. And they probably will never do it again. So, perfect fitting shoes. Water is a must. If you have nothing else, as long as you've got water. And then protect your body from the sun as much as you can. And after that, if you have somewhere to stay, and it costs $34 to get into Grand Canyon National Park, enjoy it. Just love it. Absorb it. Worry about nothing else. There's the practical things that you've got to figure out, but you'll find that stuff online. At the end of the day, when you get to the Grand Canyon, there's no toll or gatekeeper at the trailhead. If you're not going to camp or you're not going to stay overnight, you don't need a permit. You don't need anything. There's no one there asking you questions. There are park rangers, and they will say hi, and they will stop and talk, and they're doing a wellness check, even though it doesn't seem like they are. But if you're staying overnight, or they feel like you're staying overnight, or they really suspect you're trying to camp, they're going to ask you for your permit, so don't do it. There was a couple from Texas that brought their horses, and they were going through the trail on horses, and they absolutely were asked to produce the right permit for that. You could tell these people were professional horseback riders. That just everything was correct about what they were doing. So I'm sure I've been clear about all of that stuff. Go and enjoy. The old saying is, hiking into the Grand Canyon is optional. Hiking out is not. So just do keep that in mind. There are people I know of, I don't know personally, that have done rim to rim to rim straight through, no stopping, and doing it in 12 hours. Some obscene. I mean, they're running is what they're doing. Ultra marathoners, and I've seen those people. There are. It says everywhere, do not attempt to go rim to the river and back out in the same day. But I've met people on the trail that were actually doing that. You know, your mileage will vary, and it's got everything to do with your physical conditioning. The Bright Angel from the South Rim down, it's got water on it, going up the North Rim Trail. I think it is still called the Bright Angel going north. It's got water stops. No, you can get that information online. You'll find it. Now, in terms of the fact that the Grand Canyon is the deadliest national park of all, that's because about 12 people die a year. So one a month is going to die in the Grand Canyon. And that's from heat stroke, exhaustion, all of that stuff, underlying conditions. Of all of the people that visit the Grand Canyon, 5% of them hike into it, and I think the percentage that I put is 0.004%. 0.004% of all people that go to the Grand Canyon and hike, 0.004% are not coming out. Really small percent. Having said that, it's 12 times more dangerous to go into the Grand Canyon than it is to fly in an airplane, which are exceptionally safe. But just to put it into context, I suppose, if you're fearful, or what's the percentage of getting bit by a shark? I don't know, but it's 12 times more dangerous based on my calculation of going to the Grand Canyon than it is flying in an airplane. There are lots of published documentation by the National Park Service. None of it is aggrandized. None of it is exaggerated. None of it is meant to scare you. It's just facts. And I would approach the maps of the trail with a very sober mindset. But know where the water stops are. Is it dangerous to hike? It is. There's no safety. There's no rails. Oh, very little, I should say. Is there really ever the chance that you'll fall off the trail? You know, some people are like, oh, I'm going to slide off. Not really. There were a couple of spots that needed maintenance that were like, oh, okay, pay attention to where your foot's going. And there are people who are careless. That happened last year. Someone fell off. A young man fell off the edge of the South Rim. And every time that I hear of someone falling or dying, I know where they were because I stood there. I mean, I can tell you, I can paint you a mental picture of rest stop 1.5 mile. I can explain it from memory. So you have to be really mindful. And the problem with hiking, unfortunately, is you're always looking at your feet. So you need to stop and just stop. Don't look up and hike. Stop and look up. Take it in. Take it all in. So there are definitely maps that will show you where the water is. There's lots of online advice. Reddit has its own subreddit for it. Lots of people are very willing to talk to you. The Colorado River is amazing to look at. It's a roaring river. By no means would I suggest you try to get into it because it moves along at a serious clip. You are not going to swim easily through that. There's lots of trails at the Grand Canyon other than the Bright Angel and the South Kaibab that I mentioned earlier. There's lots of trails, but I'm not interested in taking those more technically challenging trails. There will be alerts that you'll be able to pull up in the Grand Canyon that if you were planning to do it next year, you could be looking at it once a month and knowing where you are. All kinds of people with tips on gear. I gave you mine and what my suggested approach to be. Having hiked South Rim to the Phantom Ranch the next day, back to the South Rim, and then having hiked from the North Rim through to the South Rim without sleeping overnight. I'm merely telling you what worked for me and what I would change moving forward. And I think the last thing that I would say about the Grand Canyon, about going, is my wife is Greek, and I say this in front of her kind of as a joke. I've been to the Parthenon. I've seen the Acropolis. I've been there. I've seen it. In fact, I'm going back in 2 months. It does not hold a candle to the Grand Canyon for me. It's here in the United States. It's $34 to get in. You'll find somewhere to park, and you'll just soak it in. And I've been to the West Rim. The West Rim is very cool. It's where the Skywalk is at. We did a trip where we went from a charter bus to an airplane to a helicopter to a boat and then back out. The West Rim is awesome. Great time. It's different, though, because it doesn't have the elevation difference that the South Rim does. Been to the North Rim in the sense of Jacob's Lake to the trailhead, but I haven't gone to the lodge. My dad and my wife went to the lodge. My wife said it was beautiful, much greener, much lusher. That all closes during the winter months. The South Rim doesn't close. So go, 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 go. That's the only advice that I think anyone needs to be told. Prepare as I've outlined, tempering that against what you know you need. And if there's one thing that you have to walk away with is have water. Without that, you've got a problem that you can't walk away from. And make sure you don't run out of... make sure that your shoes are good. If your shoes aren't good, you'll pay the price, but you'll probably still walk out. Without water, you're not going to walk out. So be really super mindful of that. Awesome. Please comment below. I would love to hear your experiences. And no, don't ask me to go back, because my InReach messenger in Jacob's Ladder down in the box, 116 is what it was. 116. I don't remember the heat. It's always hot here in Florida. Right now it's 88 degrees and it's May. But go, no matter what. Do you need to hike? Maybe just hike down the Bright Angel until you say, well, I've got to hike back out and I'm good. If you can get to 1.5 mile, I've seen children there. So that's a 3-mile hike going out. And if you take the approach, take your time. I'm in no rush. This isn't a race. You'll love it even more. You can stop, soak it in, talk. Everyone's very, most people are really happy to have light conversation. We were about 2 miles from the South Rim after going from the North Rim up the South Rim. We're about 2 miles away. And up hikers get the right of way. Not everybody understands that. So there was these group of young college men, and one of them was a knucklehead. He didn't yield, and by that time I'd already been on the trail for 16 hours or 14 hours. And, I say to them, they say to us, hey, how's it going? And my response is, we're almost there. And the guy says, oh, you're not almost there. And I says to him, I've been on the trail for 14 miles. I says, I'm almost, for 14 hours, which was really 23 miles. I says, I'm almost there. And then, there is an absolute sense of pride when you've when you've hiked it rim to rim. People will say they've hiked the Grand Canyon. Well, what does that mean? Did you hike it, or did you go hiking in the Grand Canyon? And those that hike it, I guess, want to preserve that accomplishment. Feel free to comment. Absolutely ask a question. If it's about a personal experience, about my personal preparation, I'd be happy to respond. Otherwise, the online resources are just the best place to go. It's where I went. Where are the water stops? What's the average temperature in, is there any snow to be worried about in late May? That kind of stuff. Thank you very much.